us need to have tough conversations from time to time. And if you're anything like I was, you get pretty nervous about it. You get a little bit uncomfortable. You get a little bit tongue-tied. I want to give you some pointers to help ease this process so that you can have meaningful conversations and express yourself in a way that is helpful, that helps build a relationship, and that you feel good about. So before we jump into this, my name is Kate Wood. I am an integrative health and wellness coach. I specialize in helping people overcome overwhelm, reduce their stress so they can live more powerful, authentic, and joyful lives. So before you go into the conversation, it's really good to set your intention. Some of you may want to pray and ask God for guidance before you do this step, but it's really good to know, what is my end goal here? Is it to understand this person a little bit better? Is it to let somebody know what I need? Is it to let somebody know that they've crossed a boundary and that I'm not happy about it? You want to get really clear inside your brain what the end goal is and what you're going toward. Going into it like, I'm going to give them a piece of my mind is not always the best way to go into it. Maybe won't lead to the type of conversation or the end result that you really want. So if you can keep those intentions positive, that's amazing. Not that it's going to necessarily be easy or something that the person super wants to hear, but keeping the goal in mind also kind of helps temper strong emotions. Not that you can't have strong emotions, but to help kind of direct your energy so that you come across in the way that you want to come across. So something you can say to yourself is, what's my ideal outcome? And focus on that. Number 2, stay calm and stay kind as much as possible. You may need to be kind of direct with certain people, and I think that's totally fine. We don't always have to be smiley, smiley, happy, but we do want to be kind. We want to speak the truth in love, and I think we want to be fair and not say things that we're going to regret. So if you can keep kind of an even tone, if you can avoid yelling, that's great. Yelling may activate fight, flight, or freeze in somebody else. Sometimes we feel like we need to yell in order to be heard. I would encourage you to start to develop other ways of communicating so that you don't have to yell, that you can stand in your own confidence and your own right to express yourself without needing to get loud or aggressive. If the other person is starting to get heated, you can say, hey, can we do this without yelling? Can we try to keep this respectful? You always have the right to say, hey, let's circle back to this later on. I don't think this is going to a good place. Sometimes we feel if we start the conversation, like we have to finish it then. And I don't think that's always the case. If it is kind of going sideways, you could say, hey, can we come back to this in an hour? It can take 20 minutes to an hour to come out of fight, flight, or freeze. So if that has been activated in either one of you, it's probably smarter to let it be. But actually do come back to it when you say you're going to. So I know this may sound rather mechanical, but you may want to set a timer, a subtle one like on your watch or something. So in an hour, you actually do go back and address it. I know certain personality types, and I certainly was one of these, would be like, I don't want to fight. Let's just sweep it under the rug and pretend it never happened. And that's really doesn't solve a whole lot. So you may need to ask for a timeout, but do come back to it when both parties are calmer. You may have experienced this with teens or kids where you're trying to talk to like an 8-year-old and they're losing their mind, or it feels like it. That is not the time to sit down and have a really logical conversation because they're not comprehending what's going on. The same thing can happen in adults. I think a lot of times we don't really realize it or work within that framework. We are bouncing off each other in a really negative way. This is not going well. This is not achieving what we want to achieve. It's perfectly fine to say, hey, can we circle back to this in an hour? But do circle back. That's the harder part, right? Another way to stay respectful of another person is if you can be specific. So let me give you an example. If you are frustrated with your spouse because they're often late for dinner, you've made a nice meal and they're late, they don't let you know. Instead of saying, you don't care about me, you always diss me, you disrespect me, rah, and you may feel that way. And I'm not telling you not to feel that way, okay? But what I'm saying is what you could say, and what tends to be more helpful is if you say, I felt disrespected when you came home late tonight. If you can keep what you want to talk about to a specific thing that happened especially if it happened recently. That's better than like digging up something way in the past. But sometimes we do need to take things out of the past because we never communicated them. But if you have something specific and it's a behavior, not like a you stink type of a thing, you're a jerk, take a specific behavior when they were acting like a jerk and say, you know, it really hurt my feelings when this happened yesterday. The more specific you can be, the less it feels like a personal attack and the easier it sounds to them to remedy the situation. Maybe they want to apologize. They're going to give you a call if they're going to be late. But when we make a huge blanket statement about their character, that's when we get into trouble. I think it's a great idea to talk with that person and say, hey, do you have a minute for us to talk about this? Because maybe they're willing to talk to you, but they're right in the middle of writing an important email, or they just got off a really frustrating call. So instead of storming in and saying like, we're going to talk about this now, I find that it goes a lot better if I'm like, hey, do you have a couple minutes to talk about this? And let them choose. If not, again, revisit it, but maybe at a better time when both of you aren't exhausted, both of you aren't super stressed, both of you aren't hungry. There's a lot of things that can make a conversation not go quite as well as what we want. If we can stay out of our heads, because what do we normally do? You know the answer, right? We're already thinking of our next, what we're going to say. Like, oh, here's the zinger. Or like, even if it's not that type of a conversation where you're trying to zing someone, we're already maybe thinking of ways to defend ourselves. The biggest gift I think that you can give yourself and the other person is to quiet your brain, quiet your argument, slow things down a little bit, and actually listen to what they're saying. People are much less likely to be defensive if they actually feel like they're being heard. So if you can see it from their point of view a little bit, ask them, hey, do I have this right? You're saying that you get frustrated when X and Y. Repeating that back shows that you're at least trying to understand. Sometimes these conversations, they start to feel very fast paced. They feel like a tit for tat where we're getting our punches in. If you can slow down, if you can take a deep breath, if you can really be in the moment with them, hearing what they're saying, your conversations are going to go so much better. So the other thing I would say is speak clearly from the heart, speaking the truth in love, trying to be fair, but also speaking what we need to speak. There's an art to it. It may take some practice. You may be a little fumbly and bumbly. I certainly have fumbled through many different things. And honestly, if it gets funky or if it goes sideways or both of you got kind of activated and it didn't go well, that's when grace and asking forgiveness and revisiting it at a calmer time is a really great thing to do. We're not going to do it perfectly every time. I also believe, not that we're going to drag up the conversation a million times, but if you're like, oh my gosh, I got nervous and I forgot like kind of a main point. If it's someone that you're close to, hopefully they're going to understand if you're like, hey, can we revisit this a second? Because there was just one thing I forgot to say. And you don't need to make it super long unless that's what you guys want to do. And so if you really want to get somewhere in your tougher conversations, I would definitely recommend these things. Getting clear in your head about what the ideal outcome is first. Staying calm, staying kind if it's possible. You may need to set some boundaries. You may not be able to say it in like a smiley la la la. That's okay, but we can still be like kind and respectful. Ask if it's a good time to, and then listening with the intention of understanding as best as you can. I know that's not easy because all of our words are floating around in our head, but one way to do it is to look in their eyes, to like actually focus in on them. Sometimes we're not even looking at the person and we wonder why we feel disconnected. If it's a child, you may want to get down on their level. If that person is seated, I would suggest also sitting down so that you're on the same level and it feels equal instead of like looming over them. If they're standing, maybe you want to stand too. So again, you can look into each other's eyes. You feel like you're on the same level. These are just different tips and tricks because I want you to be heard. I want you to be able to communicate what you want and what you need. If a boundary's been crossed, it's important to be able to discuss that with confidence. Those are amazing grown-up skills that we're not always taught. So I wish you all the best here. Drop your comments. Is there something that you do that really helps in conversations? Is there a phrase that you keep in your back pocket that is really helpful? Go ahead and subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so we can hang out again soon. If you're interested in how I work with clients, either one-on-one or in groups, you're welcome to hop over to katewoodcoaching.com and check that out. and certainly email me if you have any questions. Take care. I'll see you again soon.